Lives of our Saints.
On the 8th of July, our church celebrates the feast of Saint Procopios.
The following are some details on his life and works. The story of Saint Procopios is little more than a study of the iconoclasm that projected him into prominence. Influenced by the Jewish and Muslim traditions, banning the uses of images of any kind in their houses of worship, Emperor Leo III issued a decree forbidding the use of icons in the Christian Church in the mistaken belief that they represented the graven image outlawed by God in his commandments to Moses. It was against such formidable opposition that Procopius dared to raise his voice in an impassioned plea for the iconophiles. Drawing a distinction between veneration and worship, he argued that icons merely represented those largely responsible for bringing people together to worship Jesus Christ. Despite his divinity, Procopius argued that Christ relied on flesh and blood humans to establish his church for all mankind, and without the help of these select few, there would be no church at all. They therefore merit representation, to be observed and remembered, whereas Christ is adored. Oddly enough, the clergy offered little resistance to the edict, some even choosing to venerate the icons in secret, but the monks proclaimed an open defence of the law of the land, vowing never to abandon the icons. Procopius was so outraged by the iconoclasts that he left the confines of his cloister to preach out in the open, to any who cared to listen, against the evils of the iconoclast movement, which he protested would lead to namelessness and eventually to oblivion. A great number of monks from the monasteries ventured abroad to preach, as Procopius before them, in open defiance of the emperor, the supreme authority of the church and state. This brought on the swift enforcement of the emperor's law, and many well-meaning monks were not only prosecuted but persecuted as well for taking their rightful stand on this burning issue. Procopius commanded such respect from the general public that not even the emperor would risk giving out too harsh a judgment on the crusading monk, but nevertheless, Procopius was apprehended and imprisoned for more than a year. When his voice carried out from his cell, he was exiled and could return only after the death of the emperor. He preferred the serenity of his monastic retreat, but remained in Constantinople to carry on his personal war against the iconoclasts. The iconophiles were a long way from restoring the icons to all churches in the land, and Procopius carried the restoration to every corner of the land. He brought the full influence of the respected monks of the land to bear the timid, who in some cases simply wanted to remain within the law, even though the law was an unpopular one. The progress of restoration was painfully slow, but Procopius never slackened his pace in his crusade, which he carried on relentlessly until at last he was satisfied that the tide of the battle had turned in his favour. He returned to his beloved monastery outside the walls of the city and led a comparatively peaceful and full life. He died on the 27th of February, leaving a legacy of courage and faith that has enhanced monasticism for all time.